Hey kittens, and welcome to my next video on Art School Decoded. This particular video is going to go over my top 5 reasons why I've decided to walk away from higher education. The cost of tuition for students, the unfair treatment of adjunct employees, the over-corporatization of academia, aka the Walmart effect, administrative bloat, and exploitative workloads. These are my 5 reasons that I've had to walk away for now. Reason number 1.
Student debt. A stunning 42 million people now owe $1.3 trillion in student debt.
1 million people defaulted on their student loans last year compared to just 400,000 the year before.
$10,000.
$75,000.
$54,000. Over $100,000.
So here's some facts for you guys. The average amount of student loan debt has increased by over 100% since 1995. That is insane. Additionally, since 1995, the percent of students graduating with debt has increased from 45% to 75%. And the average amount of debt, average, low and high put together, the average amount of debt owed by each student is approximately $37,000. Holy shit. The cost of college has nearly tripled since 1980, while the average earning potential has stagnated or even decreased for most middle-class Americans. And this might be the biggest one that really just chafes my ass. Students and families have no idea what they're getting into because taking out loans is so commonplace in our culture. And it's not just any kind of loan. The student loans are very, very specific type of borrowing that we're going to talk about later. But the loan companies that lend to students, they purposefully obfuscate the terms, and they often are trying to trap people in debt that they know that these people can never repay. And I think this is nefarious. In my opinion, this is legal loan sharking, and it has got to stop. So reason number 2 why I have decided to tuck tail and run out of higher ed for now is the unfair treatment of adjunct professors. It's somebody who has professorial responsibilities, meaning they're teaching a class, but they don't have a salary and they're not a full-time employee. They're a part-time employee. They might get a flat rate for semester per course. And this has become quite a problem because most places rely on adjuncts. Most universities rely very heavily on adjuncts, which means the people who are teaching classes, whether they're considered full-time employees or not, have to be qualified. So what that means is, like in the arts, if I want to teach in the arts, I have to have a terminal degree in art, which is a Master of Fine Arts. So if I'm a full-time employee or if I'm a part-time adjunct, I still have to have the same credentials in order to teach the classes and for our school to maintain its accreditation. So I want to be clear that the adjuncts that we're talking about here are qualified. They're just as qualified as the full-time faculty. But the way that they're treated and the way that they're compensated within higher education is completely different. The average yearly adjunct salary is only $20,000. Drink that in for just a minute. The average yearly salary of an adjunct faculty is $20,000. While the average American professor that is full professor and tenured can be up to 6 figures. So let's talk about how this happens and why this is happening. So some more statistics about adjuncts. Only 1 out of 10 PhD candidates gets a full-time job in higher education. So these people who are dedicating their life to pursuing academia and higher ed, who are going on to get their master's and their graduate degrees, that are sinking themselves in sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, only 1 in 10 lands a full-time job because the job market is so oversaturated and so cutthroat. And so what ends up happening is these people who don't land one, they feel like they have to get their comeuppance. They have to put their work in as adjuncts. So they get hired at a school that pays them practically nothing, and they work their asses off to make ends meet. And most of the time they can't. They're looking at government assistance, or they have to work, at the car wash or at Taco Bell part-time. And they're no less credentialed than the faculty who are making these crazy salaries. 76% of all classes taught at a higher education institution are taught by adjuncts. 3/4 of the classes that you take, chances are being taught to you by somebody who is not even making minimum wage. Because of these exploitative wages, the number of master's and PhD holders on government assistance has tripled in the last 5 years. So 76% of your classes are being taught to you by adjuncts, and adjuncts are making less than minimum wage. Wouldn't it stand to reason that college should cost less, right? But it doesn't. And here's the problem. Here's why it does affect you, whether you give a shit about your adjunct's quality of life or not. Students are paying more, and we are investing less in education. In order for the colleges to even keep the doors open, they're not hiring full-time faculty anymore, and instead they're relying way heavier on adjuncts and part-time workers. And these people, these adjuncts, have no benefits, no health insurance, no medical coverage, and they're not even making an hourly wage. They're not being paid for their time. They're not being paid for their credentials. It's just like barely enough to put food in their mouths and gas in their cars. Now here's the kicker. Enrollments in higher education are on the rise. They've actually gone up 53% in the last decade. Meanwhile, we have decreased funding for higher education by $16 billion in the last 2 years alone. And there's people that are actually being hurt by this in the long run. And some of those people are your professors, the adjuncts that are working their asses off. There's cases of adjuncts sleeping in cars or couch surfing. And the reason that these people aren't being hired is not because they are not qualified. I can't stress that enough. These adjuncts aren't getting hired full time, not because they lack qualifications, but because higher education lacks the funding to be able to offer them full-time positions. It's really sad, and it's one of the major reasons why I just can't be a part of it, because my passivity in it as a full-time faculty is my culpability, and I'm just not about that life, y'all. So continuing on this trend that we just talked about with adjunct professors is the over-corporatization of academia, or the Walmart effect, if you will. And say what you will about capitalist society, I clearly have very specific views about capitalism, but that's neither here nor there. These are some straight up facts about what's happening in higher ed and why that's actually not a good thing for you as a student. One of the other things that started to really bug me that I noticed about my institution was allowing students to treat education like a commodity. But it's not a commodity. Like, it's not a product that you're buying. And when students get into the mindset that they are the consumer, they also get into the mindset that the consumer is always right. And my job as a faculty member is not to pander to you. My job as a faculty member is to challenge you, right? My job is to make you better. And sometimes that takes work. And students don't always like that. And so when we start really focusing on pleasing the students at the sake of the classes we offer or the courses that we teach, we start to get away from the meat and potatoes of what academia is, which should be an intellectual pursuit, a challenge. Reason number 4 why I'm leaving higher education is administrative bloat. And newsflash, it's not just how chubby my face looks today. Okay. So what actually is administrative bloat? Administrative bloat is the increase in spending at the college level on administrative positions and administrative salaries rather than focusing on faculty and instructional materials. So what does that actually look like? Well, the University Professional Association for Human Resources did a study, and they recently discovered that the average annual salary of a chief executive officer at an institution, so CEO, president, or really high up board member, these are the people we're talking about, make ridiculous money every year. So let's talk about what that average salary looks like. If they're at a 2-year institution, that salary is $291,000 a year. If they're at a 4-year college, a 4-year institution, it jumps up to $370,000 a year. And if they're at a school that offers doctoral studies, like, so we're talking R1, big schools, this can go up to $430,000 a year average before benefits. Are you kidding me? Now, let's contrast that to faculty, right? So if we talk about a full-time tenured faculty, somebody who's made the rank of full professor at a tenured school in America, their average salary might be $120,000. That's great money, and I would love to make it. I don't. But that's only if they're at one of those big fancy schmancy schools, right? So let's talk about the average of a full-time tenured faculty member at a much smaller institution in America. We're looking closer to 70 to 90K, okay? Also still really great money. Not trying to knock it. Wasn't making that either. But you're telling me that this person works that much harder, that they should be making 3 times what your tenured faculty are making. And in order to get tenure, I just want to break this down. You have to put in years of work. You have to be active in your profession. You have to be an excellent instructor. It's not like some cakewalk. And what kills me is that there's somebody making that kind of money, but you can't pay your adjuncts a living salary? Okay. And so finally, number 5, as to why I have walked away from my job in higher education, is exploitative workloads. I want to demystify the idea that being a professor is easy. There is nothing easy about my job. Like all jobs, some people who have this job work hard and some people who have it don't. It's just the nature of the beast, right? But overall, I think academic jobs are exceedingly difficult and work intensive, and there is a crazy level of academic burnout. Do yourself a favor and Google Quit Lit, specifically Quit Lit for higher education. There are so many people who work through this process, who are in it 5, 10, 15 years, and they hit a wall and they just absolutely burn out, which is what happened to me. I was working crazy hours and I was exhausted all the time, and I wasn't finding any balance in my life because at my institution, competency was punished by more work, right? You're rewarded, if you're even semi-competent, then you're rewarded with having to do the work of someone else. And that just, I couldn't do it anymore. So most faculty report that they work between 60 and 70 hours a week. And that is not just during the academic year, because I don't want to hear, what about June, July, and August, right? Summer's great, but you know what I'm doing in the summer? I'm working on my own research, because that whole publish or perish thing is real, dog. So I'm working on my own research. I'm also revising my classes. I'm also writing letters for students who are applying for internships, or coming in and doing portfolio reviews, or cleaning out my studio space and buying my own materials. There is no time off for a teacher, and oftentimes I would leave school and come home and continue working. Like, there was just no time off. So my salary wasn't a 40-hour work week salary. My salary is a 70-hour work week salary. And like I said, I want you guys to really look into the Quit Lit thing to see that the burnout rate among ranked professors is astronomical. So to recap, my top 5 reasons for leaving academia have been the cost of student loans, the unfair treatment of adjunct employees, administrative bloat, over-corporatization, and exploitative workloads. These are my 5 reasons that I have said goodbye to higher ed. My next video is going to go over how I amassed over $100,000 worth of student loan debt, and hopefully how you can avoid making the same mistake. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time. Bye, kittens. Mama Cat out.